Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be showing you how to improve the playback if you want to send out an actual sample of your audio. It is true that Dorico has some really great playback options, but one thing that'll really step this up is to actually export the audio to a DAW so that we can actually work with it. So I want to show you how to do that in a way that's going to give you the best sounding audio you can get. So for this video, I'm going to be using Logic Pro as my DAW. Now you could do these same steps with any DAW because what's really important is how we're exporting the audio and how we're interpreting it in our DAW. The thing that MIDI has a hard time doing is taking processing well. It's hard to fully compress it, it's hard to add character to it, and so if we treat it like an audio file, you can actually get some much stronger playback as well as adding things to it like, say, a human solo. So the first thing we're going to do is open up our Dorico project, and we need to export this as individual stems. Now you could go crazy and you could export every single instrument as its own stem, or you could do it at least by section, but what we really need to do is isolate some key things. We need to isolate the different sections of the wind parts so that we can turn them up and down and affect them ever so slightly. B, we need to separate the rhythm section instruments out, basically independently, because each one of those is going to get treated separately, specifically the drums, the bass, and the piano, as well as the guitar, because they're all going to have different characteristics we'd like to bring out. Once our project is open, what we're going to do is we're going to go under the File menu, and we're going to go down to Export Audio. And because we're trying to do specific parts, we're going to go ahead and we're going to export players as separate files. And in this case, I'm going to hit Select None, because I don't want to take everybody. I'm going to start with just the drum set. So from here, we want to choose our file format. And because we're taking this into the DAW to edit it, I'm going to export it as a WAV file to get the most audio quality out. And I'm going to go ahead and use 24-bit. These other ones are really unnecessary. You don't need to go crazy because the file sizes will be quite large, but you do want to avoid 16-bit. That's a little bit small and it'll kind of compress down our audio. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And you can see it's going to bounce this out. And where it's going to default save it is wherever the file was from our document. So you can see here in the folder of our document, we have these flows from Mercy, 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 and that's where the audio files are. And you can see it exported our drum set part. From here, I'm going to go ahead and copy that into my folder here where I have my Logic Pro project. So I'm going to just dump that over here. And then I'm going to go back to Dorico, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to export more of the audio. This time, I'm going to go ahead and export the bass part, the piano part, and the guitar part as individual files again, just like I did before. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And now from here, again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move these files over into my Logic folder. Now I want to export the horn parts as sections because I don't really need them to be quite as isolated as individual instruments. Now the easiest way to do this is if we go under the Play menu and we come down here to our Note Performer mixer, and I'm going to go ahead and go in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to solo just the sax parts. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it in playback only those sounds will be heard. Now I need to make sure I don't have two Note Performer instances going on. So I'm going to go down to this and you can see I do have a second one. So I am going to have to come in here and mute that so I don't get any of that playback. From here, if I go back to my export window and I export audio, this time I'm going to uncheck this option, and now it's going to export the playback. But because I only highlighted the sax parts, that's the only thing that's going to end up in this file. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and it's going to export that playback. Now before I export the next one, I'm going to go into my file here, and I'm going to rename this one into saxes so that it doesn't get overwritten by my trumpet parts or my trombones. So I'm going to come back over here to Dorico. I'm going to go to my mixer here. And I'm going to uncheck those sax parts. And now I'm going to check my trumpet parts. Now when I go ahead and I hit the export of audio, we're going to get a file that'll only have trumpet parts. And again, I'm going to take that quick step and I'm going to rename this one into trumpet. So again, it doesn't get overwritten by my last one. And finally, I'll go back to my mixer. I will uncheck all of these and I will check my trombones. And when I hit export, now I have all the audio parts separated so that I can do a little bit of light mixing, compression, and other things to really master this into a playback file. Now, if you were using individual software instruments on each track in the Dorico mixer, you could use the solo and mute that's built into Dorico down here, but because I'm using Note Performer in this instance, it will require using the Note Performer mixer. Okay, now with Logic open, what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight all these Dorico files, and I'm just going to drag them over here into Logic. And when I let go, it's going to give me an option to create new tracks, use existing tracks. And I'm going to go ahead and create new tracks. And because these were all created by Dorico, they're all going to line up really, really well. So from here, I can go ahead and I can hit play, and let's see what we've got. And I can solo tracks. Great, so I have a good project going already. Now, each one of these files was pre-panned in my Dorico file, so there's already a little bit of panning going on, so I don't have to worry much about that. But what I want to do is go ahead and add some basic plugins. Now, I'm going to only use Logic built-in plugins, and again, if you're using a separate DAW, you could do it the exact same way that I am using those basic plugins. So I deleted that extra track that I didn't really need anymore, and I'm going to go ahead and bring my playhead back to the beginning. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and just set a little loop here so that I can just focus on one section at a time so I can put in my plugins. So in Logic, I'm going to hit the X key to bring up my mixer just so I can see all of them at once. So for me, all of these tracks are going to add a couple of things. One is an EQ to give them a little bit of brightness and color. Two, I'm going to add a compressor to give them just a little bit of body. And then three, I'm going to see, do I need some additional reverb to give it kind of some reality into the sound. Now, one other thing you might think about is before you do any of these EQs is, do I need to level balance things? So I'm going to go ahead and throw on a pair of headphones here so that I can get a better idea of what's going on. Okay, so I've got my headphones on, so let's go ahead and listen to this playback. So to me, the drums seem a little bit quiet and the horns seem a little bit loud. So I'm going to go ahead and turn them down just a little bit. And then I'm also going to turn up the bass just a tad. Great, now it's sounding a little more balanced. So let's go ahead and work on this. So I'm going to highlight all these tracks because I know I'm going to want to do this step for all of them. I'm going to go ahead and throw on an EQ on every single one of them. And the next one down I'm going to throw on is a compressor. Now, in Logic, we have a couple of options here. The first thing we're going to do is go to our drum part, and I'm going to click specifically on the compressor because you'll notice that by default, Logic actually has an auto gain feature on the compressor, and you may want to turn that off for all of your channels involved because it's going to actually automatically bump everything up to a level, which is probably not what you're looking for. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off on these channels before I dive in. Okay, now I'm just going to solo my drum set and take a listen to it. So to me, it sounds pretty darn dark because this particular drum sound is just a little flat, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little bit of a high-end bump. And then I'm going to grab this knob here and I'm going to turn up around 4 to 6K which is where my cymbals should be. And I want to get more of that hi-hat sound. There we go, now I can really hear that. Now I'm also going to turn down a little bit of this 200, because that's just kind of a boxy range that's really unnecessary. I'm going to give it just an ever so slight bump on the end for the kick drum. There we go, that's nice. Now I'm going to open up my compressor. Now here, you can see that the compressor is really acting pretty actively. And what I actually want to do in this case is I'm going to actually compress the drums because I want to bring them up a little bit. Because right now, the low sounds are just too quiet. And so like just the kick drum is poking through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to up the strength of the compressor by raising the ratio up to say about 5 to 1. And then I'm going to turn the attack time down to say like 5 milliseconds. Now we don't want to go as fast as possible, because what happens there is you get this unnatural squished sound to it. We want a little bit of that transient to make it through before the compressor turns on. And then I'm going to turn up the makeup gain to give it a little more body. See, now you're hearing a little bit of the sound of the kick drum, not just the thunk, and I can hear a little bit more of the body of the snare. And I'm going to turn it up just a little bit more. There we go. Now we're getting a really fat sound. So let's hear this in the context of the whole mix. And see, that really helps give a lot of body to the sound of that drum. So let's go ahead and work on the bass in the same way. So I'm going to solo the bass, click on the EQ, and take a listen. So this doesn't sound too bad, but I'm going to give it just a little bit of low end. And then I'm going to grab 100, which 100 hertz on the bass is where you're going to hear the articulation or the finger noise. So I'm going to give a little bump there just so we get a little more presence. Everything else I think sounds pretty darn good. So we're going to go to our compressor now. And by the same token, I want to bring up the low sounds a little bit. So we're going to literally compress this. So I'm going to take my compressor, I'm going to leave it at -20, and I'm going to turn my attack time down just a little bit because I want some of those transients. And then I'm again going to turn up probably 4 to 1 on the bass and start adding some makeup gain. And hear how it has some resonance now, and we can hear some of that sustain in the sound. So let's go ahead and hear what that sounds like. Perfect. Now we're going to do the exact same thing to both the piano and the guitar sound. So here's the piano. So the piano needs a little bit of a bump in the high end. And it also needs some of this low end bump here. I'm going to bring down some of that boxy. I'm going to go to my compressor. This one I'm going to be a little slower because I want it to react a little slower so we get a little more of that natural hammer sound. But again, I'm going to compress it again about that 4 to 1 because it's pretty quiet, and then bring up that makeup. And then we're going to listen to that. Now I can turn the bass down just a little bit because it got a little loud. Now you might be asking, well, why didn't I just turn up the gain on the bass or on the drums and just make them louder? And the reason is without the compression, the loudest sounds will become too loud and they will cause you to peak, and it'll cause distortion in your audio, because what we really need to do And what compression, it can do two things. One, it can take a sound that has a high attack and a very quiet kind of valley in there and bring the valley up so you get more sustain and body to the sound. Or it can actually take a really sustained sound and it can make the peaks taller by cutting those valleys out. And in this case, because the MIDI is far too dynamic, the softs are way too soft for kind of what we can really hear in our audio, we need to bring that up. And so that's why we're kind of clipping off the top there so we can bring up the bottom to give it more sustain and body. So let's go ahead and do that same thing on the guitar. And you can hear how quiet that is. I'm actually going to do the compressor first because I can barely hear it. Okay, so now in the mix, we have a nice full rhythm section. So everything sounds full and rich and wonderful, and now we just need to tweak with our horns. Now what you're going to find on these horns, because they're all mixed together, it's going to be kind of a washy mess, and what we really want to do here is actually kind of point out some of these spots where the horns really are and take away some of that kind of extra. So let's start with the saxes. So to me, if you listen right about here, there's quite a lot of nice sound in there, right? See, if we take it away, it gets kind of dry. So we're going to put a little hump there. Let's check out what's here at the bottom. Ooh, really warm and lovely. So what's here at 1,000? Kind of that phone booth sound. So we'll pull that down. I'm going to make my curve a little smaller, so we're just affecting that range. And then our articulation on the horns is going to be somewhere between 2 and 4K. Just kind of depends. There you go. And then we're going to add just a little bit of this top end to get a little bit of that natural kind of room in there. There we go. That sounds a whole lot better. And now we can come down to our compressor. Now, one thing to note when we're compressing even real horns is the horns are slower than, say, the string of a bass or the drums. And so we might need to actually increase the attack time a little bit so we get a little bit more of that natural push before it pulls it back. Because in a way, this sound is actually pretty sustained, meaning it's kind of like a large block of sound. And we want to kind of carve it out a little bit so we get a little more of the punch and a little less of just the kind of monotonous sustain. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn down the threshold a lot so that the compressor kicks on really early. And I'm going to turn the ratio way up, way more than I really need. But I'm going to actually leave the attack time low, but I'm going to turn the release time way up. And what you're going to hear is it's going to allow the transient, aka the attack, to come through, and it's going to carve out the sustain. See if I bring the release back just a little bit. Now listen to what it sounds like when I turn it off. So you can hear that almost all that's left is just the attack of those upper saxes. Now this is an absolute extreme case, but if we use this same methodology and we turn the settings down a little bit, we can get more of the attack and we can kind of suppress a little bit of that the drone, and what that does is it allows other instruments to poke through so we're not kind of getting kind of a wash in our mix. So let me show you that. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn my threshold back up just a little bit. I'm going to turn my ratio down to say like 3 to 1. I'm going to pull my attack back just a little bit. I'm going to speed up my release. Now, I can go ahead and turn up the makeup just a little bit. And I get a nice, bright, punchy sound. Now, depending on your compressor, you might have a tube saturation function. Now, in Logic, for some reason, they call it distortion, which is not really what it's doing. It's actually adding saturation. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And hear how it adds just a little bit of body to the sound. And now I can turn down that makeup gain a little bit. Again, off. No saturation. Saturation. And I really like that sound. Now, because all the horns kind of work similarly, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove these two, and I'm just going to actually copy and paste the EQ and the compression setting from the saxes over to the brass. And let's just kind of hear what this sounds like, because I bet you they're all going to work just about the same. And you can hear, if I turn off that compressor, hear how it's just kind of washy and fat and sort of adds a ton of punch. And then if I turn off the solo, and that's so much better than the Dorico playback. It has so much body, it's louder, so I can really hear the bass, I can really hear the drums, I can really hear the piano. And now, the last things I'm going to do is I'm just going to level match this so that I get a good volume, and then I'm going to master it real quickly. Now, a lot of people think mastering is this really crazy thing. Frankly speaking, all we're trying to do is just set a reasonable level for our music. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of turn everything down a minute, because you can see I was already peaking. And what I want to get is a top of about -6. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in a meter here. And this meter is just so I can visually see where I am. And you can see I have a loudness and a level meter. Now the level meter is going to give me the readout in decibels. And so you can see I'm way up here above, and I need to be down here about -6. So I'm just going to turn everybody down a little bit. Cool. Now, the other one I can turn on here is this one here called the loudness meter. And what the loudness meter tells us is it actually tells us how loud it is, and this is kind of a standardized setting. And the numbers I want to throw out to you are two. One is -14 and one is -11. Those are the two standards that most audio things go for. So for example, regular Spotify likes -14, loud Spotify likes -11. And so you can see here, we're not quite up. We're really only at about -15, -16. And so that means we're still a little bit quiet. So let's go ahead and master it. So the two things we like to do in mastering is we like to put on just a little bit of EQ and then a little bit of compression. So I'm going to use this linear phase EQ. You could use kind of any EQ. There's some technical reasons why, but I won't bore you with that for today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to the overall mix. And the first two places I always look is the top end. Add a little brilliance. That's nice. And on the bottom. You can hear it adds a little bit of warmth and a little bit of color. And then I have to ask myself, is there any problem regions? Is there too much sound in any one place? For example, listen to this. See how it dries it out a little bit? So maybe I'd have a half a dB of that, and then maybe just a little bit right here. Hear how it gives me a little more punch, so I'm going to go ahead and make that one a little smaller. There we go. And that's plenty of EQ. And then finally, we're going to throw on a compressor. Now, it's the same compressor that I used before. Now, when we're compressing the master bus, we don't want to do anything crazy. We're going to do maybe 2 to 1 because we're not trying to squish the audio. Again, like we did on the drums, we're just trying to bring the quiet sounds up a little bit, and we're trying to suppress any loud sounds. So we want a fairly fast attack. So I'm going to set this down to maybe 10 milliseconds because you got to remember, we still have those drums and stuff that have really fast transient, chick, 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 and everything else we kind of want to smooth it out, and then we want to set a reasonable threshold, which I'm going to try about -15. Because again, if you set it down at -40, it's just going to slice everything off, and I don't think we want to be that extreme. And then the makeup we're going to assign per how much we need to raise the volume. Now Again, on Logic, it has this auto release, and the auto release is nice. It actually works really well, and it sort of figures out where the peaks and valleys should be, and it does a pretty good job of it. So if you like the sound of it with the auto on, leave it there. If it's not working well, turn it off, and then you can just play with that release time so that you get a nice natural release. An analogy would be that release time should let go sort of, if I was thinking about spoken word, between each sort of word or phrase. So if I said, hello, it should be all the way back up by the time I'm done saying, hello, hello, my name is David. So you can see it's compressing an awful lot here. So I'm actually going to slow it down a little bit so we get a little more punch. I'm also going to take my threshold up a little bit. Pull my ratio down. Now I'm going to turn on my makeup. Now in this case, we may want to throw on the limiter so that we cannot go past that 0 dB. So that's sounding pretty good. Now if we look at our level meter, you can see we're getting pretty darn close to 0, which is where we want to be. And if we look at our loudness meter, you can see now we're hovering right about 15, which is almost there. So we just need to turn it up just a little bit more. Now remember, the loudness is an average of all the sounds, so it's taking into account not just the loudest sound, which is our level meter, but also the average of all of our soft sounds, which is where the compressor comes in. So in this particular case, we have light compression, meaning we're going 1.8 to 1, and then we have just about 3.5 dB of makeup gain to push those soft sounds up so that the overall average is a pretty good listening level. And that's what that loudness meter means to you in a practical sense. So from here, you can hear it sounds pretty darn put together. Now, the last thing is, if you're finding that anything sounds like it's getting any kind of phasing, because it was already pre-panned a little bit in Dorico, what we can do is we can come in here and do just a little bit of light panning, even though these are stereo signals, and sort of see if that kind of cleans things up a little bit. And so you can see I'm just lightly pushing things around just to see if I get a cleaner sound. Now, when you do this, it might affect your level meter. So I'm going to go back to this loud portion of the song, and I'm just going to check my loudness again. So you can see it lowered us down just a little bit. So we can go ahead and recompress our audio just a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my threshold down just a little bit, and I'm actually going to raise my ratio back up, and then I'm going to put in a little bit more gain. Just a little bit more. There we go. So now we have a really nice, really full, and frankly, ready to distribute version of our Dorico playback. Now, you could technically try and do this in Dorico, but you'll find it's not going to work as well. I find that audio files definitely take this much better than the MIDI files do. MIDI is just too dynamic because it goes all the way to absolute nothing in sound up to loud as it can be, whereas an instrument, there's sort of a minimum that a saxophone can truly play. So you already have a slight amount of natural compression in the sound because it's just that loud. And MIDI doesn't always translate that way really well. So this is a great way of just upping your sound, and you could grab your horn, add a solo to it to make it even more natural. So thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. Throw some comments down below or some questions. It always helps the algorithm find more things. If you're interested in any of the gear or software I'm using, I have links down below. Some of them I'm affiliates with, where I'll get a little support to the channel. But otherwise, I just like to share what I'm using so that you have a good idea of how you can make your audio better. So again, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.